Super Random Japan. Nani?
One of my favorite aspects of traveling to or living abroad in Japan is the fact that there is an endless supply of hidden treasures and adventures lurking in every nook and cranny of the country. From obscure shops and shrines to cultural quirks and customs, Japan is a never-ending treasure trove for adventure seekers worldwide. Unlike many countries, Japan has a unique aspect of their geography. Due to most of the country being mountains, volcanoes, and islands, they're very limited in where they could develop cities and communities. As such, they've needed to make the most out of the little land that they have, which ends up leading to a lot of stacking and a lot of congested buildings and homes. I'm sure many people have seen viral videos of Japan's tiny buildings and, well, tiny everything. However, along with the congestion comes amazing variety. A small 4-story building may have a laundromat on the first floor, a restaurant on the second, an office space on the third, a bookstore on the fourth, and a playground on the roof. Who knows? Or any other random combination of business or even apartment setups you could think of. And I mean literally anything you could think of. I didn't even mention cat cafes, airsoft bars, theme restaurants, etc. I'm going to mention some of my favorite places I discovered later on in the video, so please stick around, or fast forward if my video sucks that much and you don't want to learn nothing. You probably won't anyway. You see, unlike larger countries, especially those in the Americas, that have had the luxury of expanding from a blank slate, unless you include the countless native people that were displaced or wiped out, but shh, we gave them casinos, so we're cool. Japan never had the ability to create cities from scratch and plan organized grid structures aside from Kyoto, since it was the ancient capital, nor did they create centralized locations for shopping, industrial complexes, schools, government, etc. They haven't had the convenience nor the time. Heck, they didn't even get the chance to westernize until the 1860s due to self-isolation. Hence, they kinda just built on existing cities, including their old windy footpaths and narrow, well, everything. Most street maps look like tangled spaghetti. With little time to catch up with the rest of the world going into the Industrial Revolution, they just slapped everything together whenever and wherever they could, and they needed to redo it again after World War II. Unlike many of their Asian neighbors, they also became very wealthy very fast after World War II due to their willpower to get back on their feet and re-earn their global pride, and were willing to work with their former enemies as well as allies to do so. Concrete jungles, as some call them, sprung up practically overnight. Plus, due to earthquakes and natural disasters, building codes have been changing constantly, so they've been rebuilding everything to this day and continue to do so. This means that there isn't time to sort out what goes where and why, for the most part. I don't think this randomness and variety is bad though, in fact it's quite the opposite. It makes Japan an ever-changing world of wonder. Like a video game series that's constantly getting the map changed. I've mentioned this before, but I believe this was one of the inspirations for my favorite video game series Yakuza, aka Ryuga Gotoku, or Like a Dragon. Rather than a huge open world map, you can do just as much in a small city setting. Instead of traveling miles and miles to get to an item shop or a restaurant or clothing store, you can have it all in the same building, or at least the same block. This is a weird example for those who don't play video games, but it's basically what I always experienced in real life. Growing up in America, I was cursed with the ever-growing need for a car to get around. YouTube channel, Not Just Bikes, as well as many others, have made great videos on the problems of this, but basically, with having so much space and designing it around the automobile from the get-go, has led to America being a terribly boring place, especially in the suburbs and countryside, especially if you can't drive or don't own a car. Public transportation in America is also about 100 years behind the rest of the world. Even in cities, though we have massive skyscrapers of the like Japan can't build, again earthquakes, those buildings usually just have 1 or 2 businesses on the ground floor and the rest is, well, office space. You still need to traverse several city blocks to get to another random business or restaurant. Another pro or con, depending on your viewpoint, of stacked businesses is the need to get people's attention in order to be noticed, meaning bright and colorful signs everywhere. I'm sure the first image that comes to mind when you mention Tokyo, aside from the crosswalk in Shibuya, is an endless view of glowing signage. Some nostalgic people still use the term neon signs, which is scientifically inaccurate, even of most of the signs in the era of neon signs, but I digress. The fact that Japanese is written vertically more often than in the West also adds to the allure of the pretty signage. It'd be inconvenient if all signs had to stick out horizontally, though some places like in Hong Kong do it. So all this competition for space and to get noticed, or even not get noticed in some examples, has led to an endless flood of eye candy and curiosity for tourists. People who live there probably overlook a lot, like most natives do of their hometown or city. They just go where they need and little else. However, as a tourist, one can easily get lost down a rabbit hole of constant stimulation. In America, I have little motivation to leave home. In Japan, I never wanted to be home. I would sometimes just hop on a train and pick a random stop and walk around. I was never disappointed. I might find some cool shops right at the station itself, especially stacked in a single building or several buildings around the station itself, or I'd leave the main area around the station and venture into some back alleys and find a cool cafe or thrift shop or street vendor. Some people might say, but Europe and other countries have that. Well, that's true, but they're not usually stacked in the same building or as randomly as Japan. Plus, businesses aren't as odd. It feels like Japan is the country of random experimentation. Take the theme cafe trend in Japan. It started with manga and internet cafes, but turned into maid, cat, and even cuddle and other crazy cafe themes. In the West, it would only take one person to stop a business from operating. Maid cafes are sexist. Animal cafes are a health risk. Cuddle cafes are just, well, plain creepy as fuck, etc. In Japan, it's almost like it only takes one person to approve of an idea for something to exist, rather than not exist because of one disapproval. All this makes it a joy to explore Japan, especially in the cities, but even the countryside provides a wonderful mix of ancient buildings, modern oddities, and beautiful nature and so forth. So there's something to be found for everybody. For a grand adventure though, it's all about the hustle and bustle of the cities, baby. One memorable moment I had was when I was walking with a friend in Shinjuku. She was a big fan of tropical locations, and so something caught her eye and she asked, "What's Tiki Tiki?" Obviously I was confused as heck until she pointed out a tiny obscure window on like the 4th floor of a building. A bank was at the bottom, showing the randomness. All that was visible was a very small dark window with a glowing neon sign saying Tiki Tiki. We went to check it out, and to our surprise, it was a huge Polynesian-themed restaurant on this random 4th floor of a building. The elevators opened and we were greeted by a talking tiki statue or totem pole or whatever. Everyone was wearing Hawaiian shirts, there were hula dancers, bartenders, etc. It was amazing. A small window with a tiny sign led us to a giant restaurant that made us feel like we were transported to Hawaii, and that's the magic of Japan. The NHK series Japanology also had a show about hidden places in Tokyo, one of my favorites being a hidden convenience store in Ginza. Since Ginza is a ritzy area of Tokyo, they hide cheap-looking places, like convenience stores. However, there are many other random hidden things in Tokyo, like shrines, etc. Still, stores, shops, old buildings, and so forth all have special treats. You might find a bar with just 5 stools but 1,000 different whiskeys to choose from, or a retro game arcade, or perhaps a restaurant that specializes in a dish from another part of the country or world. Really, the sky's the limit. One area that used to shun foreign tourists is Golden Gai in Shinjuku. It started as a black market run by the Yakuza after World War II, and is one of the only historic places in Japan that isn't ancient historic. As one of the only areas left in Japan that predates modern safety guidelines for buildings, it is a blast to the past. Not to mention a key destination for late-night drinkers. Most of the places are bars, and are only big enough for a few seats and a table or two. Many are quote-unquote snack bars run by quote-unquote mamas, women who may serve a couple of small dishes and a few beverages, but provide a nice quaint atmosphere for locals who just want to wind down at the end of the day. One popular trend in Japan is theme restaurants or cafes. There are literally hundreds of different themes, but 2 of the more memorable theme restaurants I went to were the Lockup in Shibuya and Ninja in Akasaka. The Lockup wasn't as wonderful for me, simply because my friend, in his sick humor, took me there after I was released from jail in Japan. For more on that situation, watch my previous videos on my random adventures in Japan. Still, the women, food, and drinks definitely helped subdue any PTSD. Ninja was awesome. However, it's no surprise that 80% of their customers are tourists. The good thing is that they have menus in almost every language, as well as many fluent staff. You start your journey down a secret corridor and end up in an underground ninja village. Most of the food is themed around darkness and shadows, forests or weapons, and the menus are of course scrolls. The only bad thing is that my girlfriend was upset that I went there without her, even though she never told me she wanted to go, and she's not a tourist, so I figured she would think it was lame. Other than that, it was awesome. For some of the weirder places, especially in the cafe realm of things, look no further than the nerd capital of Japan, Akihabara. You can find all kinds of strange businesses, from the aforementioned cafes of all types to figure stores, idol theaters, costume stores, and electronics vendors, selling anything from major components down to the smallest parts and so on. One of the weirdest places I ever saw was a place that removed earwax with candles or something like that, with beautiful girls who had pillows on their laps, and the guys would put their heads on them, and I think they might have been dressed as maids. I don't know. It was weird. Anyway. Also, I remember I used to enjoy walking to Sunshine City in Ikebukuro. You can go above or below ground to get there, each path taking you down walkways and streets of interesting shops and boutiques. Speaking of underground, many cities in Japan have underground malls, especially near or connecting to train stations, of seemingly never-ending shops and services. And speaking of boutiques, I'm reminded of all the fancy shops in the back alleys of Harajuku. Sure, most people know about the fashion central street of Takeshita-dori in Harajuku, but really the other back alleys and roads are where you get into some of the cool places, like homemade fashion stores and art galleries, etc. In fact, I almost never go to Shibuya or Harajuku without walking to the other via the back alleys and the main roads. It's a waste to take the train or subway. Covered streets are another popular trend throughout Japan. They're streets inaccessible for the most part by cars, but popular for shoppers who want the weather protection of an indoor mall without it being indoors. It's convenient for the vendors as well, as many will live in apartments above their shops. There are many in Osaka, and I remember I frequented one in Akabane north of Tokyo, near one of my homes in Japan. They're pretty dang common though. Most cities have them somewhere. You can usually buy fresh produce, hardware, and a slew of other convenient or fun odds and ends. The side streets and back alleys aren't the only places to get lost though. There are some pretty major places many tourists would miss out on since they aren't tourist destinations but are still cool in their own right, namely megastores. No, I'm not talking about box stores like Walmart or Costco. I'm talking about stores that specialize in one general theme but are multi-storied. The two main ones that come to mind are electronic stores such as Yodobashi Camera and bookstores, the largest being Junkudo. At Yodobashi, it's the size of Walmart, but like 6 to 7 stories tall. Each story has a different theme, from cell phones and companies on the ground floor to TVs, cameras, home appliances, video games, etc. Most getting their own floor or at least half a floor. The top floor is dedicated to restaurants, since you'll probably be there most of the day. As for Junkudo, it's the same premise. Each floor is dedicated to a section or two, usually with magazines and comics on the ground floor, foreign books near the top, and everything in between, well, in between. The more I think, the more I come up with memories and examples of cool places, big and small, random or common. However, most are examples I can't remember the exact location of, or places I just don't have time to talk about, so I'll leave it to you. Please share in the comments any questions or examples of your own. As always, I greatly appreciate if you stayed this long. Please comment, like, and subscribe to support the channel, and stay tuned for other super random Japanese topics, news, reviews, and more. Later.